Welcome back. You're with Money, and this week is really fun because we're doing something we all love doing, which is planning for the future. The only difference this time around is that Harshvardhan and Roongta is ensuring that 2016 will actually be different by making sure that everything moves smoothly from planning your finances and on to the implementation stage. Also with us is one of our viewers, Meghana, who's been making her own resolutions for 2016, and I'm sure you have a few more to go. Yeah. But before I come to you, I want to ask you actually about the review of someone's portfolio. Now, normally this is something that we ignore for years at a time, but given the way how static 2015 has been, would 2016 be a good time for actually someone to take stock of where their portfolio is and where it could be headed?
Well, Sumera, if we talk about financial planning, it is very closely linked to what is your, what stage of life are you in and what are your circumstances, external circumstances. When we talk about planning, it has been kept in, there are certain factors kept in mind. Now, what if those underlying factors change? Like if an individual who was single gets married, a couple gets a child, so everything around their finances will change. So hence there needs to be a review of your financial plan. Whatever you decide and you plan does not remain constant all the time. Now there could be a situation where circumstances you believe have not changed, but the investment environment has changed. What you had thought would be a good investment in probably 2013 may not be the case in 2016. So there is a need to review your financial plan regularly, which could be possibly every year, could be once in 2 years, could be once in 5 years. But a review is definitely necessary because everything does not remain as you have planned initially.
Harsh, I wanted to ask you that my husband and me were investing in mutual funds. Now the thing is, we are not happy with the returns it's giving us. So you think we should look at something else?
Well, Meghna, when you look at and when you invest in a mutual fund, and particularly through SIPs, through systematic investment plans, there are certain long-term goals that you've kept in mind.
Yes.
You require this money possibly 10, 15 or 20 years from now. In the short term, markets are supposed to be volatile. You would find a particular phase in a market wherein there is absolutely no return at all. You would find one particular phase, it could be just 1 or 2 years in a batch of, say, possibly 7 or 8 years, that only 1 or 2 years the markets have done exceptionally well.
Right.
And then again they have gone into the flat mode. Now this is the structure of the equity markets. Now you do not know which is going to be that 1 or 2 years where extraordinary returns have come in. You do not know which is going to be the flat period. You do not know which is going to be the bear phase. Now because we do not know, the only way to basically move along with the market is to invest regularly. When you invest through SIP, a systematic investment plan, this is exactly what you're doing.
Yes.
So you need to have some conviction and faith in the investment, in the equity markets as a general, so that they help you create wealth over a period of time. This is one of the common mistakes which people make. If in one particular year you will find that markets have been bearish, investors will stop, will stop their SIPs. Well, actually, that is the time you need to increase your SIP, because that's the time you need to buy more when the markets are not doing well. So, if not buy more, at least continue, is what I will tell you without fail.
Okay, so in that case, do you think people should just earmark a certain portion of their income for their investments, like whatever, say 15, 20, 10%, I mean, whatever they may decide?
Well, if you can, you should definitely do that. Now, let's take an example. If you're a salaried employed, there is a TDS which is deducted from your salary, and then you get the money in your hand. So tax is already deducted and money comes in the account of the salaried. You manage all your expenses within that somehow. Why don't you create another income tax in that context, or another head wherein another 10 or 15 or 20% gets deducted towards investments, and you manage your expenses from the rest of it. This only helps you ensure that you are not only talking about investing for future, but you're actually going to do this, and you're going to do this out of your income without fail. You prune your expenses to that extent. You start living within those 80% of net take home. So this kind of a habit needs to be formed, whether you like it or you don't like it. Otherwise the future is going to surprise you big time.
I wanted to ask you one thing, Harsh. If supposing I'm investing, if I want to keep about 15-20% for investing, so does that include the money for emergencies or contingencies, or do I have to keep it exclusive?
No. Now when we talk about emergency funds, we talk about investing 15 to 20% of your income. Let's understand this. If you're earning an X amount of money, you need to save 15 to 20%. Now, within that 15 to 20%, you need to earmark money for even emergency funds. Because you need to also maintain your expenses. I mean, if you're going to say 15-20% is only for long-term goals, then another 10% or 15% is for emergency funding, then another 10-15% for something else, then you're not going to be left with any money for expenses. So 15-20% is a standard which we say that that's the minimum that you should try and save.
Yeah.
How do you go about investing that 15-20% would depend on several factors. Like, it could be saving for retirement, you could saving for children's education, emergency funds, it could be for insurance. So 15-20% is an aggregate under which all these heads would fall.
You know why we call you back on money, money, money so often? Because our viewers love you. He never relegates expenses to this evil thing that you must not do. He always
encourages.
Not he encourage, but yeah, he's realistic enough about the fact that there are expenses which people have. Okay, so then one final thing, which I think would be on my list as well for 2016, which is that I'm looking to digitize my records. Is that important enough for other people also to look at?
Well,
and
Samena,
how does one do it?
Samena, let me ask you this question. If you were living in Chennai, and we've seen the floods that, the devastation that took place in Chennai, the houses were submerged in water. What if your passport was in that cupboard that you had in that house, which was submerged? What about the property documents? Now, they would have all been destroyed. Well, the least you could do is that at least scan them and have it on a server, on cloud, or have it in your own email account. So you can at least retrieve the data and apply for recreation of those documents. Like, if you are going to apply for a duplicate passport, in all respects, you might not remember the passport number unless you have a copy of it. So if you have a scanned copy in your email ID, in your email inbox, you could at least just retrieve it and apply for a duplicate one. If there are property documents which relates to your house and they get washed away, you may have kept it in a bank locker, but the bank would also be subject to floods, right? So water could get into even those lockers and destroy those documents. You need to at least have scanned images saved online somewhere, so that you could at least retrieve them and recreate those documents. So creating and digitalizing your documents is a very important element of financial planning, I would say. Because you don't want your investment records to be lost, you don't want your bank records to be lost. So if you can digitalize, of course, I mean, this is one of the resolutions that you should spend some time. It's more of a clerical job. It's not something that you really need to put your mind towards it, but it needs to be done. You need to dedicate time and actually do it.
So one weekend would suffice getting it all sorted.
I think more than sufficient.
That is if you have all your papers in order in the first place. Okay, now to wrap it up, what's your resolution? You've advised all of us. What are you going to do in 2016?
Well, I'm going to just possibly make sure that all the people whom I'm advising are going to follow this, and in turn draw a very strict discipline for myself as well. And the points that we discussed, I'm going to re-go and just go to check mark that if I have complied to all of them myself.
All right. On that note, Harshvardhan, thanks very much for joining in. Thanks very much, Meghana. I hope this was helpful, and I hope it's going to be helpful in 2016. Happy New Year to both of you. And I hope, viewers, this is useful for you as well, not just in making more money in 2016, but at actually looking at money more holistically. Let's take a very quick break. We'll come back in a bit, and still ahead, we'll bring you the best advice on money, money, money this year so far. So all the tips and tricks that you might have missed are all lined up next. You'll actually want to watch this. So stay tuned to Money, Money, Money.